So in 1983, and just a year after the compact disc for audio was created, 1983 was when the MIDI interface was created. And MIDI is M-I-D-I. It stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. Interface normally means a piece of hardware. In this case, it's really just a communications protocol. A protocol is just a way of saying, when I do this, it means for you to do that. We had that with the Morse code for telegraphs and several other examples so far. So the MIDI protocol, or language that can be spoken, describes music in terms of note on or off messages and a word called velocity. If I'm thinking in terms of a keyboard instrument, I want a note to start. Well, the machine wants to know what note should I start. And we've numbered them from 0 up to the maximum that the MIDI protocol can handle, which is 127. Middle C is note number 60, for example. And so I say, play note number 60. And then it needs to know, well, how loud should I play it? If I'm going to be making a noise, I need to know how loud it is. And so that's where we think about, well, if I were pushing a key on a piano, I would use my speed or my velocity of the key press in order to dictate how loud something is. And so with MIDI, we still call it the velocity, although it's referring to not an actual motion, but how loud something is. So I would say, play note number 60 at a velocity of 127, that's the maximum, or about halfway, about 64. Or I want to play them softer and softer, quieter and quieter, and so they would be approaching 0 each time. And then when it's time to stop playing that note, I would send it a note off message. And so what on a CD would be represented by maybe several seconds of a very complex waveform requiring a lot of data, the MIDI protocol only needs to know what note to play and how loud to play it and when to let that note go. 3 little pieces of information, assuming you have a synthesizer on the other end that can understand that kind of information. Anyhow, the MIDI protocol allowed us to step away from these very elaborate and expensive and complicated and somewhat fragile analog and automation systems, and allowed us to connect anything. They didn't have to come from the same manufacturer as long as they all spoke MIDI. They didn't even have to come from the same decade. As long as they spoke the MIDI protocol, things that could make decisions could talk to and make and dictate decisions to things that could enact those decisions. So sound making things or sound performance recording things like sequencers, or in this case we're going to look at a software sequencer where we're seeing what's called a piano roll view of a sound. Does it sound familiar? It'll look like a piano roll, but it also shows the kind of editing that we can do once, remember, we're describing our performance in terms of words. We can scratch out and change those words. It's a lot harder than changing the waveform. We're just changing the words of the performance. And so watch here as the person in the demonstration is using a piano roll editor to edit the MIDI information going on. So get a sense for what the synthesizer is doing and what the software is actually doing, which is the part is the automation and which part is purely the sound that's created by the synthesizer accepting those messages.